not be affected by anything outside of you.
Welcome to Ultrahabits. Here, we go under the hood with our guests to unpack the minutiae and to understand what processes and systems they engage or research that result in ultra-enhanced living.
Matt, welcome to Ultrahabits. Good morning, man.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, you randomly popped into my head a couple weeks ago. I don't know why, and I don't know how. Now, you and I met in 2012. You may not remember. I was probably 2 years sober, and I lived in Cronulla, and I came into one of your meditations. I think you had a little spot in a bookshop there in the main thoroughfare.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat in one of your classes, and what struck me was your intuition, like your ability to read the energy. And when people would talk to you, you were kind of connecting with what wasn't necessarily being said. And I found that to be quite profound. And you came over to my house and we did a one-on-one session. And I'll never forget, you walked into the house. And back in those days, I was like in a massive panic attack all the time. Like I was completely like redlining and still have the capacity to do so. But I remember you walked in and I apologized to you for my level of energy. I don't know why I did that. And you said to me, you go, don't worry, your energy levels do not affect mine, or something to that effect. What I want to know is, how did you come to a place where you can make that statement, or you can make that statement?
All right. Great question. What we're talking about here is detachment. And over the course of many years of studying and doing Kelee Meditation, I've earned, I wouldn't say I've mastered, but I've earned a much deeper level of detachment. Detachment gives you this openness to life, yet at the same time not be affected by it. So this is where you can access not only greater perception and intuition with what it is that you sense in the outside world, while at the same time having this self-protection of not being affected by what it is that you sense. It's the ultimate self-protection is detachment.
What led you down that path? Like, why did you feel you wanted to explore this path of detachment? And because as I understand it, you were a champion surfer, you got involved in the tour, and you kind of gave it up to pursue this. Now, I don't know if the sequencing of what I'm saying is right, but what led you down this path?
I was always curious about the mind and always curious about psychology, spirituality, and I was quite distracted, in my competitive surfing days, and yet that attraction stayed very strong. So I just had this feeling that was really strong inside of me to quit what I was doing and explore that territory that I'd sort of put on side for a little while. And my mentor at the time, who's the founder of the Kelee, Ron Rathbun, enlightened me that the ultimate psychology is not what you read in a book. It's in understanding your own mind, and you do that when you're alone. So I spent vast amounts of time alone. I went into the national park near my home here in Cronulla, and every day I went in there and for up to 4 to 5 years and started the process of going inside, where you hear these statements like all your answers are within. And it's true. I'm humble enough to say I don't have all the answers. I'm still working on that one, but it is true to say that all your answers are within. We just need to create a space where you can get out of these distractions of the outside world and the hyper energy that you talked about associated with stress and fear, and develop a place of comfort inside of yourself that is open to exploring life and even that which affects you, because that's everybody's pathway. So yeah, I felt like I'd learned most of what I wanted to learn in that world of competition and performance, and it was time to explore deeper territory in the mind, and that was my attraction to it. And that's obviously the biggest part of what I bring now with my performance coaching.
In hindsight, what did you learn through the journey of going inside that if you were able to have implemented when you were surfing, would have served you well. Like, what was missing when you were a surfer that you gained through this process of introspection?
Mental stability, calmness, not being too hard on myself if I lose. Like we learn how to do maneuvers and how to win a heat, but no one really taught me how to handle losing and how to handle my ego and other people's ego coming at me, and all these nuances of the mind. It's unexplored territory for so many people, including myself at the time. Yet there was enough depth in me to have this innate sense like it was territory I needed to explore. So I wouldn't say it was suffering like some people, and I'm sure you can probably relate to this. It's suffering that drives them towards self-help. For me at the time, it was more curiosity, and I was just deeply curious, and I wanted to understand, what I had innately known for so long, that the mind is the biggest influencer on our happiness, on our performance, everything. I mean, people say it all the time, but they don't spend much time looking into it. It's just a throwaway remark. So I couldn't keep throwing it away. I had to go explore that, and certainly no regrets on that one.
So we often hear of sages throughout the ages of going and sitting by themselves and contemplating. We know Buddha, even modern day people like Eckhart Tolle. And what's that process like? So you go there with your mania and madness and everything that's going on, and all of a sudden you're with yourself. Is that a difficult process? And how did that whole piece evolve?
Well, first of all, when you're alone, any influence you feel is coming from you. So you can no longer distract yourself or escape, which let's face it, is probably most people's brutal thing to say here, but most people's strategy for their pain is to either deny it or escape it. And there are healthy escapes like surfing or, whatever, but then there are unhealthy escapes like alcohol, right? So the process for me was being alone. You all of a sudden you're learning this technique where you're going inside of yourself and you're learning to detach from any distractions, which in the beginning is things like brain chatter, negative self-thoughts, just an inability to pay attention, because how we learn from life is by paying attention to it, right? So, in the beginning, I was really just learning to calm my mind down and become centered and develop mental coordination, via surfing and all this other stuff that I'd learned in the physical realm. You learn proprioception, you learn how to center yourself physically on the surfboard, but what does that mean if you can't center yourself mentally? So in the beginning, I was just learning to become more centered, and somewhere like nature is just an easy place to be, because a tree's not yelling at you or telling you what to do. So it was a very easy place to be calm and be centered, and with a natural point of reflection outwardly, it was much more inspiring to find my true nature inwardly, which is everybody's pathway and everybody's purpose, is to realize how amazing you are, and at the same time let go of everything you are not. And that becomes the pathway for everyone, is not just what you learn, but what you unlearn, which is all the, as you learn via Kelee Meditation, all the compartments that we pick up along the way, all the misunderstandings, all the non-understandings, all the fears, all the stuff that isn't you. It's a very courageous thing that everyone will have to do at some point of their life if they're really going to have personal development, is to face their own pain and face their own misunderstandings and face their own theories that aren't true, and stop living by theory, stop living by fear, and live via awareness. This is the upgrade, and this is the evolution.
You've introduced a really interesting topic around unlearning whilst learning. How do you hold those two simultaneously?
Well, you hold one, and we don't hold anything, I guess, because that would be an attachment or a clinging. It's really based in the simplicity of via your own awareness. It's so important that everyone accesses their own free will with their own personal development, because, oh man, just think of how many times someone's come in and told you what to do and who you are. And, it's not for anybody to say how to live how you should live your life. That's for you. So why don't we learn a practice where you develop consciousness strength and you open up your free will so you can see clearly for yourself, and then you can make wiser decisions based on previous life experience, based on what your mind senses. So the simplicity of this is you start to sense for yourself what helps you and what hinders you. It's really that simple. And you refine on everything that is real. You refine on everything that helps you. You refine, i.e. you evolve everything that is real and everything that is really helping you. And you let go, i.e. detach from everything that is not. And that is how we evolve, is by becoming a more pure version of ourselves. We need to let go of everything that is not. And that starts with awareness. So we have to leave the world of fear. We have to detach from intellectual control and theory and trying to fit into some kind of formula. There is no such formula. There is only individual uniqueness. So why not go straight to the source, which is you, and learn from the source and start to get a feel for what is you and what isn't. When you learn the practice of Kelee meditation, you go inside and you still your mind at one point. Soon you start to get a sense of what is you and what isn't, because when you're inside and there are no distractions, what you feel is you. And hence you start to grow in self-awareness. And when the first something that appears, like a thought, like a negative thought, for example, it's something else. And you learn not to associate with it. You learn not to feed it. And so the process of detachment happens, and you learn to let go of things that aren't you and just become a more pure version of yourself. And now that pure version of yourself can be a more pure influence in the world, which is sorely needed right now. Wouldn't you agree?
What I'm hearing is, you're an existentialist in many ways, I think, right? Like what's your view on belief in the religious sense? Like where does that come into play? Like, do you have a view on that?
Yes. Like I say to so many of my clients, I've been taught very harmoniously just to not have beliefs. Full stop. At the end of the day, you either know or you don't. Right? So you ask me a question. If I know, I'll share, I'll impart, harmony. If I do not, harmony means understanding. If I do not know, I'll just tell you I don't know. I'm not going to influence you with some kind of belief system that's an admission that I don't actually know. Isn't it?
So what you're talking about, lived experience.
Yes. Yes, because we don't learn from theory, but we learn from experience, right? And empirical knowledge precedes intellectual. So this does away with the Kelee is beautiful because it does away with belief systems and it does away with. This is not to say there wasn't a pure source. Oh man, I wish Buddha was involved in this conversation right now. I would be talking a lot less and listening a lot more. So all we have is the writings that, if left untouched, are quite pure. But if people start to change them, which can happen in religion, now we have an impurity, and the message has been changed to suit someone else's belief systems or to suit some kind of intellectual control, and it's not what it was. So keep in mind too, where this is. The purity of what they taught anyway is the kingdom of heaven is within you, all your answers are within you. So why are we going outside to something that can only be understood inside? Go inside of yourself. What is it you know? What is it you do not? What your pathway is about is understanding everything you do not. That's called evolution, and that's called learning. And for learning to happen, we need to first understand that we do not know. And that's a humble admission that everyone needs to become very comfortable with. Because it is, in point of fact, the prerequisite for learning is first understanding you do not know, right? So what is it we truly know, and what is it that we feel is part of our true nature? And there are so many things we don't know, and that's okay. Let's be comfortable with that, because we have to explore that territory with comfort. But there will be some things about yourself, and you don't know everything, but you're a disciplined student, or that you're very curious. So what a great starting point, to explore. that which you do not know.
I've had this thought lately, and I'll share it with you because I think you'll understand. It's kind of hard to put into language, but over the journey of my sobriety, uh, you know, you kind of initially go through what is this spiritual process or what you define as a spiritual process, and you go to the spiritual shopping market and start to figure out who you are and all that kind of stuff. And that was the journey for me. And over time, and I was thinking about this recently, I actually don't look at myself as a spiritual person. And in fact, that word kind of makes me uncomfortable. But in many ways, I feel like I'm living, I guess spirituality for me has moved from this concept of higher power or God, or I don't know how to explain it, to more of a process of optimization, right? And I guess it, somewhere along the journey, I became very uncomfortable with looking or defining myself as I'm into spirituality, because it kind of, to your point, it was a bit distant and not a way that I was actually living. And it's hard to explain, but I completely understand what you're saying. I think that it's more important how I be and what I do, versus kind of, for me, the beliefs or the gap between where I am and where I want to be, which is generally problematic in my view to have that kind of position. With yourself, when I met you in 2012, like, you were definitely an impactful dude. Now we're in 2022. If you were kind of standing and looking outside of yourself, looking at you, how would you say you've evolved since then? Like what's been your personal evolution of, process from then? Like how would you define that?
Oh man. Uh, phew.
Hmm.
How long you got?
Yeah, yeah.
uh, first of all, I feel happier. I feel, which comes from this genuine appreciation of life, that, I'm starting to feel that it's not a theory for me anymore. I genuinely feel it. I've let go of so much socialization and of habits, that never really felt good. And quite simply, I just feel a more pure version of myself. And I don't feel as much pressure. I feel more lighthearted. I feel like I don't take myself too seriously like I used to be guilty of when I was a little younger. And I can deal with this uh, evolutionary process with whether I'm in the process of learning myself or teaching someone else, with the curiosity and the natural wonder that is innate within us all. I My knowledge has grown. Like, I can't put a linear number on it, like, because when you get into the mind, it's non-linear. It's different. And so quite simply, I just feel better. And what else is there in life but to feel better? So while outwardly my knowledge feels so much greater, on so many different nuances, not just to do with how do we, in your terminology, optimize how we live our life, because there is, as you noted too, a being and a doing. We have a mind-body connection, right? So there is optimizing or evolving how we do things, whatever your craft is, which is part of the process of my performance coaching. But then more importantly, this how you are being in this thing called life, which is the non-linear part of you and your state of mind. So outwardly, my knowledge of this world, has grown greatly. More importantly, my knowledge of myself has grown exponentially, and that's what feels the greatest. It's this good feeling inside that doesn't need anything from this world. Again, I haven't mastered this. I'm humbly moving about my evolution, but oh man, if I look back and go 10 years until now, I didn't think it was possible to evolve this much. And it was told earlier in the piece that the effects of this are exponential, because most things in the physical realm to do with how you're doing things are quite like this. They get to a point and then you kind of usually go, what's the point? Everything in the mind is inverted. It's constantly opening, constantly expanding. Most of the resistance, as you would have noticed in the beginning, is your own. You're just getting through your own brain chatter, getting through your own fears, getting through your own bad habits. Now that so many of them are behind me or not in me anymore, my path is so much clearer and my conscious awareness is so much more open and detached, that and I'm so much more present in my life experience that I'm learning so much more. Yeah.
No, I get that. For me, when I reflect on my own process and evolution, I kind of reflect on how I am in the world. Back in the day, the world had lots of sharp edges, highly reactive, highly volatile, highly charged. I'm a father of 2 young children. I have a partner. I have a business. I'm in other businesses. There's a lot of challenges throughout the day, but I feel much more in flow and okay in my body. And I was trying to explain to someone the other day because I kind of have a view on the word happiness, and it's just words, and you can get caught up in semantics. But I tried to explain to this person that for me, I really am interested in how I'm traveling, and stability for me is a key word. And I think the person interpreted it like I wasn't aiming for happiness, and that's not the case. For me, what's important is consistency and stability and of self and how I feel, and my sense of being measured. And that's good, because back in the day, I just was like a yo-yo, like anything would set me off. And it's a feeling. I agree with you, and it's not easy to put into words. Let's pivot the conversation to the executive coaching, high performance stuff, because that's ultimately our audience, right? We Our audience are people that are building businesses. They're in executive, they're in startups, they're in government, and they're working very, very hard. Typically have families, about to have families, have partners, measuring, managing many different things, and they're interested in performance and consistency and stability of that performance. The work you do with executives, Matt, what is it typically orientated around? I suppose a lot of what we discussed, but why do people come to you, to your seminars? And I know you even do trips to places like the Maldives. Like, what are you doing there, man? Can I come? Can I get over there?
Of course. The nature of my coaching was always holistic, because the nature of my curiosity was always holistic. So over decades now, but I base my my work and my coaching on these 3 main pillars of state of mind, first and foremost, physical health and well-being, and then performance, whatever craft someone is in. The business and the program is called The Nature of Success. Nature meaning your intrinsic value. So how the biggest or the best foundation is knowing yourself, right? Because it's a very weak foundation when you do not. So lots of time in this self-awareness piece of helping people understand really the intrinsic qualities of who they are and all the understanding they have so far, and developing a mind that can be more understanding, because that is everything, right? Your value in this world is everything you understand. We can't place value in theory. We certainly can't place value in fears. But yet, if most people are honest with themselves, most of how their mind is meeting the experience of life is stressed, reactive, theory, opinions. So I help people know themselves, know how they want to live, and just get after it without fear, with more awareness and less fear. Now, of course, that's just this feeling of being alive, which is what everyone's looking for. So the pillars of first, creating and putting a practice in place, which is Kelee Meditation, to learn to still the mind and learn detachment and learn self-awareness and learn how to become more understanding and how to detach from reactivity, how to detach from adrenaline, which is what plagued you when we met. Because if there's adrenaline, there's fear, and if there's fear and adrenaline, there's instability in the chemistry, and that's going to affect your health, not just your performance. So how do we get rid of these or detach from these stress states and have a mind that is open to every experience of life and adding value to life because you're simply just an understanding human being. You're not coming from your ego, which is going to be adversarial with people, and it's not the energy to run off. So I help people get into the right place being a state of mind. And since performance, no matter what your craft is, tends to be compromised by the fear of fatigue, we address some physical health and well-being issues too. So we get the most out of both worlds, of optimization of the being and the doing on a physical health level. And then we start to look at, what it is that they do and how we develop the skill, knowledge, and state of mind to be amazing at whatever craft they're into, and setting goals with clear action so they can get where they want to go in life. So yeah, that's a brief summary of how I work with people.
And Matt, with that, is your view that an individual can only get so far in their craft by focusing on excellence within the doing? Like where does the major optimization piece come out of the being?
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I learned early, like my mentor told me that around 80%, like this 80-20 principle, most people are aware of. It's actually a natural principle, like it appears in nature. And it actually appears in our nature. 80% around 80% of your energy, of your entire being, is state of mind. 20% is just the chemistry, and this sets up the mind-body connection of in this case energy, but also relates to our performance and our health. So people will resonate with this because that inspiration will give you more energy than a good breakfast, right? Or depression will take more energy than a bad breakfast. Yet we still have so many people that are working on the second point, outside in. And while 20% is still a big number, it's not going to touch the mind, and that's the biggest improvements and gains people can get. Because for the most part, I deal with quite elite people already. Like they're very already amazing at their craft, and they're already quite geeky when it comes to health and exercise and sleep and all these things that underpin good optimization of our physical energy. And certainly I can take them to the next level, but since the mind is unexplored territory for so many people, this is where we get the greatest gains, is exploring that. So I said this to an NRL team a while back too, if to demonstrate how much more important mind is. I asked them a question. I said, would you rather run at a small guy that has no fear, or a big guy that looks really fearful? And the answer was quite clear. I'd run at the big guy that looks fearful. So that's just an example of how it appears in sport, or how many times have you seen someone that's really good, either in knowledge, and they crumble in a key note because they get nervous, or they crumble in my old world in a heat in competitive surfing because of nerves and because of stress and because of fear of failure and fear of losing. So we need to have some honest conversations and to learn how to detach from your fears, which, if everyone's really honest, becomes the greatest adversary in everybody's life will be your own fear within. And this is how we learn true courage, is by facing your own fears and not having them influence your life.
Matt, working with athletes and then working with high-performing executives, I'm sure there's similarities and differences. I would assume with athletes, the physicality part is already there. They're generally looking after their body. With corporate athletes, there may be a good level of IQ and stuff like that. And I'm just generalizing. When you're working particularly with executives that have high levels of IQ, is there an upside or a downside to intellect in your process?
Well, of course, it's obviously the intellect is part of our evolutionary process associated with Homo sapien, the thinking man. So the intellect is great because it enables us to be smart, right? Because who wants to be stupid? And I say that facetiously in a way, like lightheartedly, because when that's one of the main reasons to have a brain, is to learn not to be stupid, to repeat unnecessary suffering. Like if you've seen something that doesn't work before, you have a memory associated with your intellect. Why would you repeat that? So our intellect is where all our programming is associated with previous experience, and where we analyze the experience of life and where we think about things. But the thinking process is limited because we can think wrong. And other people can think wrong. And if their thinking wrong influences you, now you have a program that's based in a misunderstanding. Again, this is why we need to evolve out of the brain and learn to have the mind interface with the intellect, not our ego. And again, we're going into sort of deep territory here, but this is where most people are, is their ego is interfacing with their intellect. And the result is you have opinion and insecurity. Right? And this is how most conversations go. So what the Kelee enables you to do is in a way, to become a triple threat. And I don't mean to sing, dance, and act. I mean, you'll have strength in the physical body, because who wants to be weak? You'll have intelligence in the brain, because who wants to be, stupid? And you'll have strength in the mind. Strength in the mind is awareness, because who wants to be ignorant? So we learn awareness of mind, and that is what brings out the best of your intellectual capacity, so that you can't be taught wrong by someone else's ignorance, nor do you create any misunderstandings. Because let's face it, people get in our own way. We think things that aren't true. We accept things that aren't true. Like someone might have a limiting thought when you're a school child, like you're not good at mathematics. And if you accept that, now you've got a belief system that's going to inhibit you the rest of your life. Everybody should know and understand that anything can be learned, anything, if you can learn to focus your attention towards it without limitation. So while the brain is this amazing tool that we have as human beings, it's part of its advanced nature, is part of what separates us from the animal kingdom. Yet when we run it from ego, we're still part of that animal kingdom, based in survival and fight or flight and competition and survival of the fittest. So part of everyone's evolution is to not be adversarial anymore, to be basing our life in understanding, not like competition and adversarial nature, because we are not at our best when we're in competition with ourselves and the world. Wouldn't it be better to just feel good? And if you choose to impart something, it's coming from understanding, not the need to prove yourself. So this is a lot of the stuff, like back to your earlier question of what I've been processing out in the last decade, just to be real and honest with you, is so much crap that I created from my ego, of feeling like I had to prove myself and feeling insecure. And now I see it so clearly in the world, and it's part of everyone's evolutionary pathway, is to feel good and to evolve into allowing to be centered in mind. The mind doesn't live via comparison like the intellect, nor does it live via fear like the ego. It lives via understanding. Isn't that a better place to live?
When we met in 2012, at the end of our session you sat back and you kind of gave me some feedback, but you went through this interesting internal process where you kind of were reading my energy. What was that? What were you doing?
You said it. I was reading your energy.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is quite abstract, but it's something I had some innate limited abilities to do. And then when I started doing the practice myself, and certainly teaching, it really started to come online. I noticed I could do it. So this is the nonlinear. This is the unspoken. We in the physical senses, you can look at this image of me and say, oh, you're running with a beard at the moment, or you're wearing a blue and black checkered shirt. That's what your physical senses are picking up. But what does your mind sense? Your mind senses the unseen. Your mind senses the nonlinear of basically what's happening in a person's vibe. And simplistically, most people will resonate with that, where you walk away from an experience with somebody and you'll go, yeah, I like that person. They had a good vibe. And that'll be a sort of throwaway comment, but literally you're reading their vibe. and within everyone's vibe is pretty much everything you need to know about that person. So over the many years of teaching now, which is around 15 years, and looking at people while they're doing the practice, I've learned how to read nonlinear energy, and this just enables me to help someone with things that they cannot see themselves, i.e. their own blocks inside and who they really are. And I'm sure that's something, I did 10 years ago. So that's definitely not something that's going backwards. My that level of perception is with the, having done the practice for so long now, is just getting greater and greater. So these days it's more about like, what is it that I need to focus on with this particular individual that is going to be most helpful. So that's what was happening. And you'll notice that I get very quiet when I'm doing it, because most people, if they're trying to do something, and again, I use that word specifically, people raise their energy. And if there's any adrenaline, now they've got too much energy and they lose feel, right? So for surfers or other athletes or even executives that are trying to access the best of their intellect, you'll do that via finesse. You'll do that when you're centered and when you don't have too much energy, which fragments the focus. So you'll notice I relax in and get more still, so I can sense what's actually happening and help.
That's brilliant, Matt. And the reason I'm asking that question is with limited success, I try to do that with my staff and my people, really trying to be in sync with where they're at and being with their physicality, because so much of what they're saying is unsaid. And I would ask you this question: if an individual works on themselves and starts to unblock themselves, does this capacity increase within all of us to do this with each other? Do you think that's something that's possible?
Oh, absolutely. We all have spiritual antennae. So you have physical senses, but you also have the mind's eye, which senses. So everyone has this. This is, I've just learned to, I guess, I mean, I feel like mine's crazy limited compared to my mentor, but it's something I've developed over the years. But everyone has this, like a basic feeling about someone. There's what people say to you, and then there's what you feel about them, right? So this is the simplicity of what we're talking about here. I've just learned to trust what I feel, and over time I've learned to feel in great detail. But for everyone listening, we need to bring this back to some kind of simplicity that's practical, you know what I mean, and relatable to themselves. And everyone can relate to that you get a basic feeling about someone, and you get a basic feeling about something. And this sets up the relationship with life is trust your feeling, about your pathway and how evolved is your feeling to sense, from your own free will and associated with your own awareness. Trust your feeling and you'll always move in the right direction. And if you have a feeling that, something's not going to turn out so well, then maybe don't go in that direction, because how many times have you gone against your feeling and then regretted it? So to bring this back to some simplicity, it's just about feeling. Everything in life is about feeling, and too often people, they're either looping through fear or just overthinking everything. And the simplicity of this is getting to feeling, and that will guide you. Isn't health a feeling? Isn't happiness a feeling? Isn't love a feeling? Isn't presence a feeling? So we're trying to get the best of both worlds, where we're not only doing better, but we're feeling better. And to do that, you have to have access to feeling. And again, this all comes back to the practice, because do you have a way to calm down brain function and brain chatter and access the mind, which is where we feel.
And that's a great segue. Matt, just want to thank you for your time, and we're going to look to land this plane, as I always say. But one of the things that we want to do is kind of always touch on how our audience can habituate some of the stuff that our guest is talking about. And what seems to be the central theme with you is that the gateway to this whole process is awareness and starting to know thyself. How would you advise someone that's interested on this path of personal evolution? Like, where do they start? Like what should they do?
Well, they start with themselves, of course, and I mean, there are ways if they want to seek help, and isn't it just great in life that there is help? You know, there is someone that has traversed the territory that you're maybe challenged by at the moment, and so to have a mentor, to have a coach, etc., is a beautiful thing. So if someone was, curious about some of the themes that we spoke about today, if they were curious about the sort of the holistic performance side, they could obviously just go to my website, and there's my individual coaching, but there's an online program there as well, that has the 10 sessions, with virtual me of explaining the knowledge and asking self-reflective questions. And it's a great program, and that's just at thenatureofsuccess.com.au. And for people that were interested in the journey of Kelee meditation and just state of mind side of things, you can go there's also an online program there, which is 10 sessions, and it's fairly cheap, and I want also people to know, I don't want to feel like I'm selling here, because the healthiest things you can do in life are free, and breathing and sleeping well and moving and meditating is free, but first you need to learn how to do it. So you can go to those avenues and learn and set up a great foundation that you can either keep going with having a mentor, or you can have a strong enough foundation to just to go alone and to really understand this thing called life, and understand this thing called you, and understand how to evolve yourself in a way that is harmonious. And it's what we need in the world, right? Is more harmonious people that know themselves, that are not infecting the rest of the world with fear and stress, but with harmony and understanding.
Beautifully put, Matt. Honestly, well said. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Such practical and actionable stuff, but I really love the depth and the philosophy. I can do it for hours, man. And I'm gonna have to catch up with you when I'm in Cronulla. I still get out to Cronulla whenever I'm in New South Wales. I live in Victoria now. Miss the sun. I definitely miss the sun. But again, just want to thank you. Want to thank Kate for organizing this, and thank you so much from Ultrahabits.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to share.